Hi, my name is Antonio Hernandez. I'm a current candidate for the Antioch Unified School District Area 1. I'm originally from Antioch. I've been through the Antioch Unified School District from kindergarten through high school, and I've seen the ways that we can really help out our students when we use our resources properly. My family came to Antioch 25 years ago. My parents my dad works as a dishwasher at Red Lobster, and my mom works as a fry cook at Jack in the Box. And through my journey in this educational system, I've managed to go to universities like the Stanford University, where I studied economics, and combined, me and my siblings have gotten degrees from Stanford, UC Berkeley, and Los Vidanos College. As a candidate, what I want to bring to the school district is really three things. One, I want to increase our school safety by really getting to the roots of the problem, by looking at things like food insecurity, housing insecurity, access to trusted adults like counselors and mental health specialists. I want to make sure that we're really taking in bold new ideas, especially in this global pandemic, making sure that we are taking the best parts of distance learning for our families and for our diverse community that doesn't always work 9 to 5, that can't have their children learning in school, and that we're making sure that we're really applying a wide set of solutions for all these diverse families that we have. And finally, I want to make sure that we're looking at everything from a lens of equity, making sure that all students are really benefiting and that we're not continuing to widen the achievement gap. I think we can make a huge difference here. I'm excited for the potential that Antioch has. I know that a lot of people sometimes view me as a success story here, but I know that we have the potential to make tons of more students, and my story should not be unique because we have a lot of great students here who can achieve so much, and I'm here to help them reach their full potential.
Hey everybody, this is Vote the Hispanic Chamber here with Antonio Hernandez. He's running for Contra Costa County School Board Area 1. We're here to kind of get the skinny on what exactly is going on with that campaign and to learn a little bit about Antonio and figure out what he feels is in store for the county, educational system coming into 2021. So welcome, Antonio. Thank you for joining us here at the Hispanic Chamber, and tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. Again, my name's Antonio Hernandez. I'm from Antioch, California, and my family's been there for the past 25 years. And I'm running for Antioch Unified School District School Board because I see there's a lot of ways that we can continue to improve the education that we're getting here in Antioch. So I went through the education system in Antioch, starting in kindergarten all the way through high school. So I've experienced the system that we have. And, honestly, the way that I've seen things going is a lot of things haven't changed, and that includes the gaps in education that exist. Some of the things that I think a lot of classmates and people that I talk to bring up a lot of the time when talking about Antioch is they feel like being successful in Antioch means leaving Antioch. And for a lot of people here, that's not a choice that they really have. They have their careers here, their family here. I know my parents plan on staying here for the rest of their lives. And so I think about people like that and people who don't really have that choice to leave or who choose to stay. And rather than looking at, how do we leave this district and then go live on our lives, I'm trying to see how do we bring those people back? How do we make sure that we improve the community here? So one of the big challenges that we're facing with this global pandemic is that as we're moving to things like distance learning and different, and preparing for this upcoming school year where, some of the budget pieces are a little bit uncertain with all the costs that are coming because of the global pandemic and all the larger economic effects that may be coming down through our school district. I'm really concerned about some of those disproportionate impacts between our students of color, our Black students, our Indigenous students, our foster youth, our homeless students. I'm scared of that gap getting wider. And so I think we can make very smart decisions as we're coming up with some of these tough choices to make sure that we can still continue to close the gap even during these challenging times.
Very interesting. So thank you for that overview. And so to kind of put it in further perspective, what is Area 1? Can you give us a geographic idea, maybe some boundaries that we can understand?
Yeah, so here in Antioch, we've moved to area-based elections. So this is the first year that we're actually moving to this. This is a very recent change. And we've divided the school district into 5 different areas. so we can get a voice for those particular residents on the school board, because previously we found that like the school board members tended to be all from certain areas of the city, and we want to make sure that we're really getting the voice of everybody. So Area 1 covers the downtown area of Antioch, the area by the Delta. So kind of the boundaries are the Delta, and then at the bottom part, once you hit Highway 4, then at the left-hand side, you end at L Street for people that are kind of more local here and know what that means, and then all the way till you hit Highway 160. And that's roughly the area that's covered by Area 1 there.
Okay, cool. So from like a tax-based perspective, who's paying for the education in that area, or is that how that works? Can you give us an idea of like, let's say for Area 1, are you looking to garner the support of maybe a specific type of constituent that's going to make education better, you know, for that area?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I think about when thinking about Area 1, if you look at our demographic breakdown, is we have a very large amount of our more lower income residents here in Antioch, the way that the distribution comes out. And so I'm looking to really engage some of those people, because they're the ones who, again, are suffering some of this disproportionate impact. At the end of the day, the way that the funding works is it doesn't get broken down by area. So it's about like having that voice and making sure that we're really amplifying those voices, because that's some of the things that that we need to make sure we're amplifying, so that, again, we don't widen that achievement gap.
Okay, so it's not like the type of taxpayer within the area gets to decide the quality of education, but rather it's kind of like the role, it works as a representative for that area, but then there's like a regional approach that's taken to the educational system.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, gotcha. Super. So now you're coming from like a Stanford economics type of background. That's pretty interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and you know what brings you into politics?
Yeah, so that's a really great point. I think one of my strong suits when I'm coming into this race that's coming in. So I studied economics at Stanford, and I really focused on healthcare economics, and we're looking at things like how do we really improve the health of the people that we have. My background, immediately after graduating, I went to go work for the University of California, San Francisco, where I work as a quality improvement coordinator at San Francisco General Hospital in the pediatrics department. So I'm working with parents and kids every day to kind of improve their outcomes there in the hospital setting. And a lot of the work that I do is also research-based. So I've been part of projects that look at things such as how parents talk, read, and sing with their 0 to 3-year-olds, which has been proven to be just a huge indicator of how students will perform once they get to kindergarten and as they continue on their journey through the educational system. So it's really about setting kids on the right trajectory. I've also have a lot of experience teaching kids directly. So during my summers, I would go to the UC Berkeley Haas School of Business, where I taught entrepreneurship and business skills to high school students during the summers. These high school students were from really diverse backgrounds, and we primarily recruited from those that are underrepresented in the community. And so a lot of these students were from low-income backgrounds. A lot of these students had foster youth background. So I've worked with these students firsthand. And even now I continue to work with students in my job. Right now I work also as a youth leadership teacher for high school students that are interested in careers in healthcare. So I help teach these students how to run their organization, and every year they put on a conference with over 1,000 students that attend.
Wow, that's really impressive. And so clearly you must have like a short list of things that you'd like to see change. And so from like a baseline perspective, where are we and where do you think we need to go in the maybe near and midterm? And I emphasize the near and midterm because of the climate we're in economically and politically, which right now are kind of very intertwined and putting a lot of the stress on our public systems.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is really key to what I'm trying to do and what I think we need to do a better job at here in the school district is really making sure that we have our metrics well selected, and that when we're looking at those metrics, we're tying them directly to the actions that we're doing. So here in Antioch, we have what's called a local control accountability plan, where the community gets to share their feedback and input on the way that the school district spends money specifically for our high need students. And when looking at that plan, we see a lot of areas where we have two types of metrics going on. We have what are called more process metrics, which are things that you do, such as like making sure that every teacher's credentialed, making sure that we implement this training for every teacher, things that you can kind of check off like that. And then we also have outcome metrics on there, things like reducing the amount of absences that students have, reducing the amount of expulsions and suspensions. And what we're seeing in that local control accountability plan is that over the years, we're really not meeting any of these outcome metrics, which is what we really care about at the end of the day is, how are students succeeding? How are students achieving? And are the things that we're doing actually leading to the outcomes that we want? And so, all of these actions over here, such as the training, such as making sure that our teachers are credentialed, that all takes money. And so if we're spending money on these actions, these process pieces, and we're not seeing the outcome that we want to see, we need to really reevaluate why we're doing these things so that we're getting the outcomes that we want.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So from a demographic standpoint, how is the region, what is it comprised of? We as the Hispanic Chamber, we certainly try to be subject matter experts, on the Hispanic, demographic, but we look at things regionally, and especially when we're trying to advocate for certain solutions, we want we want to support things that are sustainable. And so considering the and you mentioned earlier the Latino segment, and so can you give us kind of an understanding of how you are approaching the macro challenges and where specifically you think that there are maybe some issues that are maybe significant enough to maybe put some attention on the Hispanic or Latino segment?
Yeah, so my area is actually has a strong Latino population. Approximately 20% of the population here is Latino, and 25% identify as Black here in this area. And in particular to the Latino population, I really think back about my experience going through the education system here. So my parents came here from Mexico, and they don't speak English very well, and they have challenges reading and communicating in English. So a lot of the times I was the one there translating those messages, helping us get registered in school. And even now, as I see the processes that we have here, there's a lot of students that are still having to do that for their parents. And so one of the biggest ways that I think we can start helping the population here is making sure that we're providing all our materials in languages that our populations can understand, and making sure that we're communicating with them in languages that we understand. Through some of my work, again, in the pediatrics department, we've seen the ways that implementing things like interpreter services, even like dial-in interpreter services, can really help improve the way that patients, particularly parents, feel engaged in the care of their kids. So it's entirely possible that we can see that same type of impact here at the school district level. I like to think about things like, when I was going through school and we'd have those parent-teacher conferences, and our teachers didn't speak Spanish, they would just kind of tell my mom, hey, you guys are doing good. And that was usually the end of that parent-teacher conference. Because it was hard for them to communicate past that language barrier. But I imagine, how much more engaged my parents could have been, how much more engaged can all the parents in the district be if we had an interpreter there, either in person, over the phone, even can make such a huge difference in making parents feel like they're part of this educational process here.
Wow, you're this is all hitting very close to home, because I was one of those kids that experienced all that, and certainly our family went through all that, and so definitely all that resonates with me. Now, looking at kind of like the broader systemic challenge, with maybe a less than a quarter of the population or the demographic being actually Hispanic, and then having a subset of that being challenged in the way that you just described. where do you feel that there are maybe special needs that need to be applied in whatever demographic there is? I mean, obviously, there's kind of like that assimilation challenge where we want Hispanic families to be included, and at the same time, we want them to eventually kind of migrate over and participate in the broader economy. When an Hispanic goes into business, they want to do business with everyone else, and everyone else sees that Hispanic segment as being very lucrative, and sometimes kind of the things get lost in translation, and opportunity is lost. And so from the systemic level, what are maybe some specific things that you think we could enhance about the way we do things to maybe bring a better result?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's coming to mind when you're talking about this is some of the ways that we implement the process of helping our more recently immigrated students adjust to speaking English and adjusting to understanding that language. I remember having challenges with that as well when I was in school. So from an early age, I understood English and was able to do very well, but I was continually placed into English language learning courses, most likely because of my racial and ethnic background. These classes were not really helping me because I was already kind of past that level, and I could have been spending that time kind of focusing on other pieces of education, such as exploring other elective courses and other ways that my education could continue to get enriched. And so I've definitely heard a lot of parents say things like, hey, I don't know why my child's in this course. They're, they speak English perfectly well. And other times we see the reverse of that problem, where we were pushing kids along this pathway and pushing them to more difficult courses when they haven't mastered some of the basics that would really be fundamental in making sure that they're progressing through this smoothly. So I think that's one of the areas that I think systematically we need to take a broader look at how exactly are we putting students into these courses, and how are we evaluating the success of them in these courses.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So now we're heading into a pretty interesting kind of a business climate, if you want to call it. It's more like a storm. Perfect one at that. We are anticipating some significant corrections, at least if you're looking at the macro perspective. Certain industries probably feel insulated, and I am a firm believer that a lot of people make a killing. They build a lot of wealth during economic depressions. Unfortunately, it doesn't include folks that are maybe caught off guard, unprepared, or aren't in an industry that's conducive, to benefiting, or isn't aligned with those rewards that come from those corrections. And so, as we feel the brunt of what's coming with, first of all, the massive deleveraging, we're kind of coming down from a big debt bubble, and as it is, these cities were in trouble fiscally. What do you think that the current economic climate brings to the area of Antioch with regard to maybe fiscal challenges, and what should we prepare for as a community, as a business community, leadership? I mean, is civic leadership soon going to see the peasants come to the castle with the pitchforks and shovels, or what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really hard to know, right, with all the uncertainty. But I think one of the things that we should be preparing for is, some financial challenges that could be coming up. Luckily, there seems to be, at least school district wise, there seems to be incoming funds to kind of support us through this global pandemic. But that doesn't necessarily always cover the cost of dealing with a global pandemic. So while we do have a lot of these challenges, I think I also see the possibility for opportunity through these challenges that are coming. I think when we're looking at education specifically, when you have to make choices, to cut things, when you have to make choices of where we're funding things, we can look at what kinds of students that's going to be impacting and make sure that that impact is being spread over, all of our students, and not just disproportionately impacting one group of students. So when we make decisions such as what facilities are we approving, what schools are we putting money into, different projects that are going on, we have to look at what's the enrollment in those schools, which students are in particular benefiting from these programs, and making sure that we're really not targeting any of the programs or any of the work that we're doing that's really mostly benefiting our students that usually struggle with that achievement gap that I've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. From a taxation standpoint, do you foresee we're going to, require some kind of special handling of that current tax policy? In any measures, in any what do you call those? I think they're usually like measures when you're like, like those funds, when those bonds, when we try to raise money for education. Do you foresee any of that needed, in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to education, I think we've been pretty severely underfunded for such a long time that those kinds of things are always welcome and absolutely needed. Just earlier today, I was talking about how looking at in California, how is it that as far as teacher spending, on average here, teachers spend about $700 of their own money to get supplies for the classroom and to make sure that they have everything to need to teach these students. And so those are the kinds of costs that really we should be taking on and that we should not have been cutting and passing on to our teachers. So I think, especially as we think about how we're going to implement things like distance learning, where students are going to need laptops, where students are going to need stable internet connections, we're going to need to be creative and really think about potentially, trying to get more money through some of this funding because it's needed. And I think the most important thing to remember when we talk about things like that is that education is not a silo. Education really ends up affecting all parts of the economy. So the way that we educate our students eventually will lead them to become part of the workforce, will lead them to become these future business owners. So it's really an investment in our economy when we choose to spend on education.
Yeah, cool. I guess that's probably the obvious, right? That we're going to certainly need to adjust to accommodate things. And so, what do you think we're going to need to accommodate? Obviously, there's maybe like some technology, some equipment, anything related to maybe curriculum that we need to add, maybe some kind of adaptation to the opportunities of tomorrow. Take, for example, maybe the massive changes that are coming in the area of decentralized finance and what cryptocurrencies are basically, bringing into the business world all across the board, not just decentralized finance, but everything that relates to how services are rendered, fulfilled, how security works, and all these innovations that we see coming about. We hear a lot of folks that come through, and in my role, I've been in this chamber post for a good maybe 5+ years, and I have seen a lot of folks coming through the political sphere, wanting to see change in the business mix that we attract to these areas in East County. And so we've, I think, spoken about everything from facilities that are geared towards companies that bring in jobs to maybe facilities that help kind of bring that educational experience that we feel we need for tomorrow. But let's say maybe from a like a school curriculum standpoint, do you see any curricula that you think needs to be added to the mix? Something that you're kind of near and dear to, whether it's finance, tech, life sciences, whatever, anything that you can think of that's that you think we need more of in East County?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's two things that really came to mind when you said this. I think the first is a little bit off from what you were talking about, but I think one thing that we need to make sure that we do with our students, that's really easy to forget about, is make sure that we implement some time to process everything that's been going on with this global pandemic, with the social climate. I think we need to make sure that we're spending time decompressing those kind of thoughts, making sure that students have an outlet to talk about these things, because usually their outlet was talking with their friends, but now that they aren't necessarily able to meet up with them in person, we need to make sure that we're finding ways for these students to kind of process all the history that's kind of going on in the moment right now. Yep. So that's one piece right there that I thought was really important to mention. But when you talk about, what can we change in the curriculum to kind of give our students the skills that they need, I think one of the things that, we've been working on here in Antioch that I think we can continue to work with and continue to expand with is we have what are called linked learning academies that tend to specialize in certain industries and kind of frame their curriculum around those things. So I myself was a product of one of those academies. I went to Dozier Liddy Medical High School. So all of our curriculum was linked behind healthcare and all those different pieces. But we have a number of different academies here in Antioch that are part of the different high schools that are here. So we have an engineering academy, we have a law academy, and we have a number of other academies that kind of focus on other areas. I think one of the things that we can do a better job of introducing, and you were definitely touching on this, to kind of all of these academies is really thinking about that computer science aspect. I think it's really hard now to imagine any industry in which, having an understanding of coding and programming can be a huge help. I know that even understanding, having an understanding of the way that these concepts work can really save a lot of time and effort. So I work in quality improvement, and a lot of the things I do sometimes can seem like menial data input, but with a little bit of coding background, it suddenly becomes a task that you get done in a few minutes. And so there's a lot of things like that I think we're only beginning to capitalize on in all the different industries that exist here. And by preparing our children with this background in computer science, understanding those kinds of things, we can kind of start moving all of these industries forward. So I think that's one area that I think would be really great to implement, and especially now, as we are here in distance learning, we at least have every student equipped with a laptop, so we know that they have the technology access that they'll need right now to practice those skills. And it's arguable that the distance learning environment might be one of the better ways of learning these computer science skills. So we might as well take this as an opportunity to really enhance the types of learning that might work a little bit better through distance learning.
Cool. So tell us about financial literacy or illiteracy. Yeah. It seems like a lot of the problems that we are in right now are sort of the fruits of, or the fruit of financial illiteracy at a kind of a global level. So where do you think we need to kind of pivot from where we're at now? And you're an economics major, and I want to talk a little bit about the life science stuff, because I know you also come from healthcare, right? Is that? Yeah. So you got that healthcare background. So let's talk a little bit about like financial literacy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that students definitely want more of. I think, when you look online and see the different discussions that are happening among our youth, one of the things that you see a lot of jokes about, but I think is rooted in a lot of truth, is things where students are like, oh yeah, I learned that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but I never learned how to file taxes. And so I think that's pretty, while it's a joke, I think there's truth there that our youth are trying to communicate, that they'd love to have, some thoughts on, how do I go about filing my taxes? How do I go about thinking about things like interest rates? I think that's one of the areas where we can really, educate our youth and teach them a lot of great skills. So I spent, like I was saying earlier, I spent my summers teaching entrepreneurship and basic business skills at UC Berkeley through their Haas School of Business. And a lot of the skills that we taught there were really skills that I think transfer over very well into school. things like, how do you give a business presentation? How do you think about budgeting? All of these things are parts of education. When you go back into these other pieces of curriculum, you'll see, traces of it as you explore mathematics, as you explore history. Having this understanding of, financial literacy can really make an impact there. And not only that is, the other important piece that I think you're touching on there is that, we can't just think of our students as here from kindergarten through high school, but we also have to guide them into what happens after high school. And, we can't just throw them out into the real world without knowing that they'll have these skills and preparations to be successful, whether they go on to college, the military, vocational jobs, or maybe they go right into the workforce. We have to make sure they have the financial tools to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And certainly, healthcare is something that you have some direct experience with. Actually, I have a lot of thoughts regarding the healthcare landscape, and I suppose maybe where legislation goes will kind of define, what happens with healthcare in the coming, years. Do you see anything that we need to be doing from an educational system standpoint to maybe seize an opportunity there, or to kind of prepare students for those opportunities?
Yeah, I think definitely as far as, even in healthcare, we're definitely moving to a more digital space there. So I think working on those kinds of skills will really prepare students for a career in healthcare at this point, as things become more digital and as things become more faster paced. Those kinds of things I think are really important in terms of that. The other thing that I'm thinking about when you're mentioning this is thinking about how we as a school district engage with the healthcare process of our students. So my background's in healthcare, and a lot of the times it's really hard to disentangle the healthcare students from the education that they're receiving. So a lot of the times students have trouble in school because of things like mental health challenges, because of behavioral issues, because of health issues, and making sure that they're getting these things handled and treated and supported through our healthcare system is challenging. Our healthcare system is very burdened, and it doesn't always do a great job of making sure we capture all these students. But one way that we can help support that is by working with the school district and understanding the way that the policies that we set here really impact the care that students are receiving on a healthcare level.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And, when we're looking at the kind of all the different constituencies that comprise the county's educational system, the student body, tell us about poor Blacks, poor whites, the underserved, and whatever area that we're really needing to address. I mean, what's going on in these areas? I mean, do we have do we have a part of the county that's working really well? I mean, are there folks that have it really good, and we're trying to maybe bring the rest of the county kind of up to that level? Give us a little bit of the lay of the land, like.
Yeah, so I think
how good or bad do folks have it in different areas?
Yeah, so I think everywhere we're kind of facing challenges with that group, and I think one of the reasons why we're facing those challenges.
Which group?
With like all of our high needs groups. So that includes our Black students, our Latino students, our low income students. There's really not a lot of places where we're seeing great success there.
We have low income whites.
Yeah, we definitely have like a large amount of low income whites. And I think, one of the challenges with these high needs groups is that we sometimes tend to frame them all together and want to think about their issues as a group all together as these high need groups. And the thinking behind that, it comes from a very great place and a very admirable place where we want to be able to help more students. But some of the evidence that we have out there says that this isn't really the right approach to making sure that we're closing in those achievement gaps, because when we think about and make decisions for such a large group, only the most privileged and the most resourced of that group tends to kind of reap the most benefits. So really when we're looking at how are we going to close some of these gaps, we need to be thinking, we need to be very, very specific and very, very intentional about the things we're doing. So if we're going to look at something like increasing the, performance in math, we want to say something like increasing performance in math for low-income Latino students. And when we focus on a group like that, there's evidence that shows that not only do we close that gap, but we'll see residual effects where these other groups will also raise their performance as well. Because again, like the students with the most resources will end up benefiting and gaining from those pieces just as a result of the way that some of our institutional systems are built. So by choosing to focus really precisely, we can make sure that those groups that we care about are getting those benefits. But yeah, I definitely think that, we can't take too broad of an approach to this because then we'll just end up maintaining that achievement gap.
Antonio Hernandez, Contra Costa County School Board, Area 1. Antonio, how do we get a hold of you? How do we support? What do people need to do?
Yeah, so you can get a hold of me through any of my social media channels. The handle for all of them is Antonio4AUSD, and that's FOR. You can also go to my website, which is www.antonio4ausd.org. I'm always looking for perspectives, for feedback. If you have any thoughts on what we need to do to improve the school district, I am all ears. So please reach out. También hablo español, entonces si ustedes hablan español, me pueden mandar mensajes en español y yo les puedo responder.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective with the Hispanic Chamber. We look forward to having you back on, for an update later on in your campaign, if you're willing to do that, especially if anything, pops up that you'd like to share. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. I've had a real fun time here.
Awesome. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and make sure you check out Antonio's websites. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much.